massive protests swept Israel on Sunday after the death of 6 hostages in Gaza. Protesters are increasingly frustrated over the failure of Israel's leadership to secure a ceasefire deal that would free captives in Gaza, who have now been held for nearly 11 months. Israeli media estimated up to 500,000 people demonstrated across Jerusalem, Tel Aviv and other cities, demanding that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu do more to bring home the remaining 101 hostages, about a third of whom Israeli officials estimate have died. Edith Tepperson blames Netanyahu for what has unfolded.
I think we have a criminal government who lets the hostages be murdered only for the sake of the coalition. And we have a prime minister who doesn't think of the good of a country, but only of his own good.
In Tel Aviv, police officers clashed with demonstrators as they urged them to stop blocking traffic. In Jerusalem, protesters blocked streets and demonstrated outside of Netanyahu's house. It was only earlier the same day that the Israeli military announced the recovery of the hostages' bodies. They say the bodies were found in a tunnel in the southern Gaza city of Rafah, as the Israeli Health Ministry confirmed they were murdered by Hamas terrorists in a number of shots at close range. By the end of Sunday, Labour leaders called for a one-day general strike on Monday. Netanyahu, who faces growing calls to end nearly 11 months of war, said Sunday that Israel would not rest until those responsible were caught, while Hamas officials blamed the Israeli government for the deaths because of its refusal to sign a ceasefire deal. Families of the deceased hostages criticised the government for delays in negotiations, while US President Joe Biden expressed his anger and vowed accountability for Hamas. Negotiations mediated by the US, Qatar and Egypt have not yet succeeded despite ongoing efforts. Meanwhile, Israel and Hamas agreed to pause fighting in areas of Gaza while a polio vaccination campaign begins after a baby last month was partially paralyzed by the virus, the first case in the territory in 25 years. Israel's assault on Gaza began after Hamas and other militants killed about 1,200 people and took about 250 hostages in attacks on Israel on October the 7th, according to Israeli tallies. Since then, Israel's offensive has leveled much of the enclave of 2.3 million people, and the Gaza Health Ministry says at least 40,000 Palestinians have been killed. Displaced people are living in dire conditions with inadequate shelter and a hunger crisis.
A temporary accommodation center in the Moscow region of Russia has become a sanctuary for children evacuated from Kursk. Many of them were whisked from their homes in the wake of attacks by Ukrainian armed forces. Deputy Director Elena Zubkova oversees the center, which hosts 126 children. She says the children show signs of their traumatic experiences. For example, if the flash or siren of a fire alarm went off, the children would ask if there were air raids or drones flying towards them. The children are making the most of their situation, but the absence of their parents is felt deeply. One of the evacuated students, Ilona Shevchenko, says she was forced to evacuate from a camp in the Kursk region to Moscow and said the experience was a little scary. While Shevchenko misses her family and friends, she said she was advised not to go back. Kiev launched its surprise operation into Kursk in western Russia on August 6th. Ukraine says the incursion, arguably its boldest move in a war that began with a Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, aims to protect its border settlements from constant Russian strikes. Kiev claims to control about 100 settlements and said it reached up to 22 miles deep into the region, but later advances appeared to have stalled.
Doctors in the Democratic Republic of the Congo continue to fight a surge in Mpox cases as they await the arrival of vaccines in the next few days. The World Health Organization said on Friday that 230,000 doses are immediately available to be dispatched. They were donated by the European Commission and Danish Mpox vaccine manufacturer Bavarian Nordic. Dr. Jose Pululu, head of the Mpox Centre at Viana, said the people being treated here are those with severe or critical cases. He detailed how Mpox can lead to serious complications if not attended to, including genital lesions. Despite the push for vaccination, some patients like Blaise Mukendi are hesitant about being inoculated.
What will it do to my body? Something I don't know. Because with COVID-19, we saw that some people refused the vaccine. Some accepted the COVID-19 vaccine and others refused because they had other problems afterward. So with this vaccine, we need a clear explanation of its role in our body. If it will really help us, we will accept it. We are sick.
Earlier this month, the WHO declared Mpox a global public health emergency. More than 18,000 suspected cases of Mpox have been reported in Congo so far this year. The viral infection has now spread to at least 12 neighbouring countries. Mpox had been circulating in the DRC since January last year, but only became a grave concern this January when scientists spotted a worrying new mutation.
The Philippines and China on Saturday accused each other of intentionally ramming Coast Guard ships in disputed waters of the South China Sea. The collision near the Sabina Shoal was their fifth maritime confrontation in a month. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea, including parts claimed by the Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, Taiwan and Vietnam. The Permanent Court of Arbitration in 2016 found China's sweeping claims had no legal basis, a ruling Beijing rejects. Portions of the waterway, where $3 trillion worth of trade passes annually, are believed to be rich in oil and natural gas deposits as well as fish stocks. The Philippine Coast Guard said that the China Coast Guard vessel 5205, quote, directly and intentionally rammed the Philippine vessel without provocation. They added that the ramming damaged the Philippines' 320-foot ship, but no one was injured. In a statement, a China's Coast Guard spokesman said a Philippine ship, quote, illegally stranded at the shoal, had lifted anchor and, quote, deliberately rammed a Chinese vessel. He called on the Philippines to withdraw immediately or bear the consequences.
Children at Nasser Hospital in Gaza started to get vaccinated against polio on Saturday, ahead of the planned start to a United Nations campaign. Marwa Alcott says she's doing her best to keep her baby girls safe, both from polio and fighting in the enclave.
I was worried and afraid because this is scary, the polio disease. Every step we take, we thank God that we are safe, because of the strikes, jets, and everything happening.
Underscoring the risk in the area, Palestinian health authorities said Israeli strikes killed dozens of people on Saturday, with clashes in Gaza's central and southern areas. In a statement, the Israeli military said it continued to operate in the central and southern Gaza Strip. The UN is due to start vaccinating some 640,000 children on Sunday. It will rely on daily 8-hour pauses in fighting between Israeli forces and Hamas militants in specific areas of the war-torn territory. World Health Organization officials say at least 90% of children need to be vaccinated twice, 4 weeks apart, for the campaign to succeed. Gaza's Deputy Health Minister Youssef Abu al-Rish said teams would try to get to as many areas as possible, but added the daily pauses may not be enough to guarantee enough children are reached. We call for a real ceasefire so that this campaign can really succeed, he said. The vaccination push comes after confirmation that a baby was partially paralyzed by the type 2 polio virus, the first case in the territory in 25 years. But the effort faces huge challenges in Gaza. The enclave has largely been destroyed by nearly 11 months of war. Nearly the entire Gaza population of 2.3 million has been displaced, and there is a hunger crisis. The conflict was triggered on October 7th when Hamas fighters attacked Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking about 250 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. Israel's subsequent assault on the Hamas-governed territory has killed more than 40,600 Palestinians, according to the local health ministry.
Asian factories are getting busier, but economic headwinds continue to blow strong. That was the reading from closely watched Purchasing Managers Index numbers on Monday. The figure for Chinese manufacturers rose to 50.4 in August, going above the 50-point mark that indicates expanding activity. That number mostly covers smaller export-oriented firms and was more optimistic than official PMI numbers released over the weekend. Chip makers are among the sectors doing well amid robust demand for products to fuel AI. Economists say that showed up in figures for countries with major semiconductor sectors. South Korea's PMI number rose to 51.9. Japan saw gains too, rising to 49.8, still in contractionary territory, but only just. It was helped by a strong rebound in car output after a safety scandal forced plant shutdowns the month before. Still, worries remain, including fears that US demand, a key factor for Asian exporters, is set to slow. There's concern too over the uncertain outcome of the US presidential election and what might follow. Still, the International Monetary Fund remains optimistic about Asia. It predicts moderating inflation will allow the region's central banks to cut rates to support growth. Intel could be headed for a big shake-up. A Reuters source says boss Pat Gelsinger will present a plan later this month to sell off businesses and revamp capital spending. It's thought the proposal will be put to a board meeting in mid-September. There was no comment on the report from the firm. However, Intel is under pressure to do something as it lags rivals on AI. Its market value has sunk below $100 billion following a disastrous second quarter earnings report last month. Meanwhile, rival Nvidia, seen as the big winner from the AI boom, has seen its value soar to $3 trillion. The source says Gelsinger's plan is likely to see capital spending slashed. That could drive Intel to scrap a $32 billion factory in Germany, a project that had already been delayed. However, it's thought he won't suggest selling off the company's contract chip manufacturing business. That has already been separated from its semiconductor design unit and reports results separately. Intel has reportedly retained Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs to advise on what assets it should get rid of. Programmable chip unit Altera, which it acquired in 2015, is seen among likely candidates for disposal. Intel has already announced plans to cut 15% of its workforce as part of cost-saving measures.
Norway's Princess Martha Louise tied the knot on Saturday to her longtime partner Durek Verrett, a self-styled spiritual guru from California.
It was amazing. The whole thing. Det var fantastiskt.
What would you like to say about your wife, your beautiful wife, Durek?
I think she's the most amazing woman and the most gorgeous woman, and I'm so glad I made my vows to her.
The wedding marked the culmination of 3 days of festivities to honor the pair. Scandinavian royalty, influencers, and celebrities all took part. But some critics have said that the event has been too commercialized. Martha Louise stepped down from official royal duties in 2022 to pursue her own business ventures more freely. She said the couple would not use her royal title commercially, but the pair has faced criticism from the palace and members of parliament for linking commercial activities to her royal status. A few months ago at a liquor company media event, the pair introduced a pink gin for their wedding with their names and a monogram. This week, Norwegian health authorities ruled that the marketing was inappropriate. The couple ceremony was only open to media sponsoring the event. It was not broadcast on TV, unlike her first marriage in 2002 that ended in 2017. It's not the first time Martha Louise has stirred controversy. In 2007, she announced she was a clairvoyant and had started a school to help people by teaching them how to talk to angels. As for Verrett, he becomes part of the extended royal family, but not the core royal house of Norway. That means he will not become a prince.
Dos 2 últimos anos. E é possível que o peso possa ajudar a explicar o teto ter cedido, né?
Pode ser, às vezes é multifatorial, mas pode ser um fator.
Tem uma festa com romeiros, né?
17 pessoas foram atendidas.
The rescue teams attended to 17 people. 2 were taken to the hospital and the others suffered minor injuries. Unfortunately, 2 men died. We are removing the bodies. We are doing a final check with the fire department dogs to see if there are any other victims. We believe and hope there are none. When the collapse occurred, several people helped to move the people who were trapped, so we still do not know how many people were here in the church.
Do corpo de bombeiros para ver se tem mais alguma vítima. A gente acredita que não tenha.
Socorristas e mesmo das pessoas, o que sugere